Well, hi there, and welcome to our Sunday hymn time. And I want to send a special shout out to my friend Sherry this morning. Yes, because Sherry actually requested this song really for my radio show that I do on Sundays. Yeah, I do a little hymn feature, and she asked if I would do this hymn. And I thought to myself afterwards, this would be a good song to sing for you. Yes, you folks who put up with my singing and playing. And before I get to it, though, a couple things to mention about it. And I was reading about some of the story behind the writing of this song. It was written by a man by the name of Charles Weigel. And he lived from the late 1800s to around 1966. And Charles Weigel was a traveling preacher, an evangelist, went around telling people about Jesus. Now, I don't know if he spent too much time away from his family. I'm not sure all the details. But one day, probably about 100 years ago now, Charles Weigel came home after an evangelistic tour, and he found a note on the table. It was from his wife, and she said, "Charlie, I've had enough of this life. I don't want to follow God anymore. I'm taking our daughter, and I'm leaving." And she did. And as you can imagine, he was quite heartbroken. Now, I heard a couple of different stories, just little fragments of them, but one was, several years later, he met his wife on the streets of Los Angeles, and she mocked him, mocked his faith, mocked his way of life, told him what a wonderful time she was having now that she was no longer under the shackles of any sort of religious faith in Jesus. But I heard another snippet of a story. And again, I didn't get all the details in this story, but his wife eventually got ill, and she was lying on her deathbed, and her daughter was there. And she said to her daughter, she said, "If you have any idea where your father is, would you go to him? Would you ask him if he could forgive someone who has sinned as much as I have?" And I don't have all the details of what kind of life she lived. Nor do I have any detail as to whether Charles Weigel's daughter even knew where her father was. But I have a feeling that if he went around telling everybody about the love and forgiveness of God through Jesus, I would think, yes, he would have forgiven his wife. More importantly, I believe God would have forgiven her. Yes, God will forgive anyone, no matter what you've done. But if you come to him in repentance and sincerely confess, he's a forgiving God, isn't he? Well, somewhere around 5 years after his wife passed away, so it's the early 1930s now, we get to the writing of this song. And Charles Weigel kind of carried this as a burden with him maybe all through his life, for all I know. But he kind of unburdened himself in the writing of this song, and it's brought a lot of comfort to a lot of people over the years. I hope it blesses you today too. The song is called "No One Ever Cared for Me Like Jesus." I would love to tell you what I think of Jesus, since I found in him a friend so strong and true. I would tell you how he changed my life completely. He did something that no other friend could do. No one ever cared for me like Jesus. There's no other friend so kind as he. No one else could take the sin and darkness from me. Oh, how much he cared for me. All my life was full of sin when Jesus found me. All my heart was full of misery and woe. Jesus placed his strong and loving arms around me, and he led me in the way I ought to go. No one ever cared for me like Jesus. There's no other friend so kind as He. No one else could take the sin and darkness from me. Oh, how much He cared for me. Every day He comes to me with new assurance. More and more I understand His words of love. But I'll never know just why He came to save me, till someday I see His blessed face above. No one ever cared for me like Jesus. There's no other friend so kind as He. No one else could take the sin and darkness from me. Oh, how much He cared for me. Oh, how much. How much He cared and how much He does care for you and me. You know, you can't overemphasize the love of God, by the way. Well, as the scriptures tell us, God so loved the world, He loved you, that He gave His one and only Son, that whoever believes in Him would not perish, but have everlasting life. And I was thinking about some words, and they appear quite often in the Bible. And they're the words, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And God said them to various people. God said them through various people. I was thinking, way back in Deuteronomy. Well, there's a look how far back we're going. Deuteronomy chapter 31, Moses summoning Joshua. Joshua is about to take over. He's going to lead the children of Israel into the promised land. And Moses said, the Lord Himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. How easy it is to get discouraged. And actually God said the very same kind of words to Joshua, right? Do not be discouraged. I'm going with you. I won't leave you. And I think David even said that to his son Solomon, who was taking over from him as the king. You know, that God will never leave you nor forsake you. And in Isaiah 41, he's talking about the whole nation of Israel. And in verse 9, he said, I took you from the ends of the earth. From its farthest corners I called you. I said, you are my servant. I have chosen you and have not rejected you. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And some of the final words Jesus gave to His disciples in that Great Commission, right? He said, to go into the world and preach the gospel. And He said, lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. God, He will never leave you nor forsake you. That might be something that encourages someone here today. And you know how much God really does care for you? In sending His Son, that's how He demonstrated it. But I hope that even if you're feeling maybe tired of serving the Lord, maybe it's been a while since you wanted anything to do with Him, as you come back to Him, and I encourage you to do that, remember, He will receive you. He'll receive you, and He'll never leave you. He will never forsake you. No one ever cared for us like Jesus does. You can count on that. God bless you today.